Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Five Questions with the Paulists. And today we're going to head up to Boston. And, it's always great when we could extend this beyond the ordained folk and bring in Patty Simpson, who has been at the Paulist Center for, Patty, how long was it? Almost 30 years, right?
It'll be 30 years in September, and I was a community member for about 5 years before that.
Yeah.
So 35.
Awesome. So let's get right into it. Question one. Boston's always been this great tourist city. People walk on that Freedom Trail. What's COVID done to the city of Boston over the past year?
I think like a lot of downtowns, it's kind of sad. It's very deserted, especially we're right near the financial area as well as the State House. And there's almost no one down here. But I will say they've taken great advantage of this time to build up bike lanes, which I'm actually a bicyclist, so I should be excited, but I also drive to work. So I'm like, well, this is okay now, but I'm not sure I'm going to be too excited about this once everything goes back to normal. And, but the desertion, but, the lack of the tourists, the lack of, the big office buildings are not occupied. People are, working from home. It's a weird feeling, and having worked downtown actually for almost 40 years, even from prior to my Paulist time. It's a really weird sign. And I will say personally, my biggest loss is I'm a huge Dunkin' iced tea drinker for unsweetened iced tea. And I cannot walk to get a Dunkin' thing here. The 3 or 4 Dunkins closest to the Paulist Center have all been closed for this whole time and not open yet. So I have to import my Dunkin' from the suburbs.
So, question 2, and you may have just answered this. What's the number one thing that you miss about pre-COVID life? Is it your Dunkin' or is it something else?
Oh, no, it's something else. What I most miss is I'm a huge extrovert and I love being with people. So what I most miss is just the being able to hang out with people and chat and visit. And so that's what I miss most. But if when I thought about this question just in preparation, something I miss a huge amount that's specifically church related, if you will, is I super miss being able to sing in church. And I'm actually concerned that even when we're allowed to be fully back, how long is it going to be before they say it's okay for us to sing? Because as I think the Paulist Center is a singing community, and I'm not a good singer, but I always felt like I could sing in church.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, I could even remember when I visited the Paulist Center in Boston many times. Like, I just can't imagine that without music,
Yeah, so it's, so we've told with the small masses that we've had, we tell people they can hum under their masks, but that's still not the same thing.
Yeah. Okay, so question 3. What do you think will be the biggest challenge for the Paulist Center when it's safe to fully reopen?
I think the biggest challenge is, first of all, who knows, right, what the new normal is going to look like. But I do wonder how long, even after we're allowed to be open, it will really take for people to feel fully safe, not just coming back to church, but coming downtown and coming out of their bubbles, because the huge majority of our community members come from all over. They're not downtown folk. And I think the biggest challenge is going to be seeing how long it takes for the numbers to really return, and also to start generating, if you will, having new people feel comfortable checking church out. So that's what I think is going to be the biggest challenge, is to get back. How long will it really be, even after it's open, to get close to feeling like, we're back? Yeah. And I've already had some community members ask me questions about that. And I'm like, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not sure, because I'm like, even when the bodies can be back, is it going to be back if we're not allowed to sing yet? Is it going to be back if we can't still have religious ed yet? Is it, pack the auditorium for our supper club, our feeding program? even when we're allowed back in church, is it going to be okay to have 200 people downstairs eating for our feeding program or our auction or our Sunday coffees or whatever?
Yeah, lots of questions, right?
Yeah.
For folks who don't know, the Paulist Center in Boston is right next to Boston Common. I mean, it's literally, you could hit Boston Common from Patty's office with a stone if you wanted
If
to.
I turned my computer around, you could see the sun setting over the common out the windows.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so, question 4, what's gotten you through the pandemic? What's brought you comfort? Is that, a food, a Netflix binge, whatever it is?
Yeah. So I am in general not a TV watcher. I generally don't leave time. I'd way rather talk to people and socialize. But during COVID, once we got past, I have to say, from March until the beginning of August, I was in the camp of people that were crazed as opposed to bored.
Mm-hmm.
And so for a lot of that time, I kept saying, I don't want this pandemic to end until I get my 2 weeks of being bored, because I want time to watch something on TV. Or I'm also a huge puzzle person of all sorts, including crosswords and jigsaws. And I'm like, I haven't had time to do a jigsaw puzzle yet. But in the last number of months, as things have gotten calmer, and we got the live stream up and all those things that we were crazed trying to do in those first few months, I have been able to watch a few Netflix shows with my husband. And I would say seeing Downton Abbey, which we had never managed to see, was probably the biggest thing. But we've also watched Grace and Frankie, and
it's great
forward to what should be a final season at some point on that. And we just finished The Crown, caught up on The Crown. But I hadn't seen any of it, so we had to see it from the beginning. So that's been kind of fun that there's been time to do some of that, because I'm not a binge watcher, and normally I'm like, I don't have time to watch a whole series.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I always say I don't have time for an hour show. I could do like I could do a half hour one. Sure.
I'm like, yes, NCIS once a week is kind of like
The Big Bang Theory is fine.
That was our favorite. Yes, exactly.
I just binged 12 seasons of that, or I think it's 12. Yeah, we just finished it the other night. I was like, wow, it was great.
From the beginning to the end.
Yeah.
I don't know how much I missed, but that was one of our staples. So I think I saw most of the time it was on. But my husband's an engineer, so I love it. The fact that I would laugh every week at that kept reminding me that I had married the right person. The fact that I found that humor so funny still.
Right. And finally, question 5. You've been such a staple at the Paulist Center in Boston. What's your all-time favorite memory of all your years at the Paulist Center?
So I decided that I deserved one per decade, since if that's okay. And so one of my most favorite moments was we had a building engineer custodian here who had been here for about 40 years. Wow. And he thought he was retiring just on Social Security, because there had never been any kind of retirement or pension plan here. And we were able, this is many years ago now, but we were able to establish a pension plan and buy everybody in for their years of service. And it was going to take a lot of money to do that. And so we never told him that we were even trying until we had it done. And so honestly, one of my most favorite memories is not even communal. It's the meeting that we had with him to tell him that he was going to be having this pension to retire with. And it still makes me choke. We were all crying. Everybody in the office was crying because he had been such a faithful employee. So that was one. But then looking at the chapel, we did a huge capital campaign for a building renovation and to establish a small endowment here, going back about 2 decades or so. And part of that was commissioning sanctuary artwork for our sanctuary. And in typical Paulist Center fashion, we couldn't do anything easy. We picked designs that had been submitted by 2 different artists, one from Naples, Florida, and one from Berkeley, California, who did not know each other, and said, hey, can you 2 work together? Because we want some of this and some of that. So it was a huge, long process, but the unveiling of that And the blessing of that artwork is definitely a high point. And we won some national awards for it, for sanctuary art. And it's still incredibly stunning. If anybody ever comes to Boston who hasn't been here, please come visit our chapel, because it's an incredibly compelling environment to pray in, largely because of that sanctuary artwork. And let's see. Oh, and the third one was early on when I was here, but when I first came, the center was technically bankrupt with unplanned debt. And I have to say, a highlight of my early years here, and it took several years, but was the day that we paid that debt off and came to an even playing ground to be able to look forward with. And it was then after that that we launched on the capital campaign and all of that to get to the pretty secure financial footing we're in today. But the day of paying off that last piece of debt was also a super highlight of, I felt like, all right, we're good to go from here now.
Patty Simpson, it has been quite a career with a lot left to go at the Paulist Center. So thanks for joining us. And if you're ever in Boston, folks, right on Boston Common is the Paulist Center. So join them when you can.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you. Thanks for having me, Mike. It's been great chatting with you.
You too. This has been 5 Questions with the Paulists, and she's Patty Simpson. I'm Mike Hayes, and we'll see you all again soon.